Welcome to the 5-Star Zone. Rico Beer, Harold Shelton III from the Big Ten Network, Senior Research Manager. Joining us on the show, college hoops, Big Ten hoops. Harold, you kind of getting a separation. Well, all of a sudden you're seeing the good teams. Some teams are starting to fall off. A surprising team was Wisconsin. Nobody saw this coming. Picked to finish close to the bottom of the Big Ten. Wisconsin in a race because really their schedule sets up. They get the Michigan State schedule at the beginning of the season where they're kind of playing the bottom feeders, and they got Michigan State on the road. That's it. Other than that, they finish up with a bunch of teams that they should win. So I look for Wisconsin to kind of make a play to be Big Ten champions, co-champions. Put it this way, I can almost guarantee, just like every year, it's like death and taxes. Wisconsin will always be in the top four and get the double bye in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, certainly seeming that way again. And like you said, schedule-wise, outside of the game at Michigan State, I mean, they'll be heavy favorites at home against Oregon and Washington and Penn State. Their only other road games, Minnesota. And while they are playing well, Wisconsin, I think, is better than them. Their offense is unbelievable. And I got to give a lot of credit to that staff for just saying, hey, look, we need to open this up. This isn't 2002 anymore. This isn't 2012 anymore. Like, this is 2025. We need to open this up. We need to space the floor more. We need to go quicker. We need to shoot more threes. And they're doing all of that stuff. John Tonje looks like he's probably the best transfer in the country, and no one really thought anything about him.
Where'd he come from?
So he was at Colorado State for a while. Then he was at Missouri and barely played because he was hurt. And so then he came over to Wisconsin in the offseason, and he's old. So, he's a 5th, 6th year guy. So you're bringing in a guy with a lot of experience, a lot of games under his belt. And clearly he's done a great job. He's probably 1A with Braden Smith for Player of the Year, in my opinion, in the conference.
We'll get to Braden Smith in a minute. Matter of fact, let's just get to Braden Smith right now. Before we get to the matchup of Michigan State for the battle of first place, Purdue now 3-game losing streak. What's going on with the Boilermakers, man? How did they fall off so quickly?
Well, I think part of it was schedule. It is a 3-game losing streak, but you played arguably the 3 best teams in the conference with Michigan, Wisconsin, and Michigan State, 2 of those on the road. They had the lead most of the game against Michigan and let it get away late. I do wonder if Braden Smith's getting worn down a little bit. He's been playing pretty much 40 minutes every night. They took him out a little bit in the Michigan State game, trying to give him the extra breather, during media timeouts and stuff like that. But I think they rely so much on just 2 guys that it eventually kind of catches up to you when you start playing the better teams. And their rim protection, I mean, they don't have any. We saw Michigan State. They got 10 dunks in that game on Tuesday.
They're looking like Lob City.
Yeah, exactly. And then you saw the Wisconsin game, the game before, they gave up 94 points in Mackey in regulation, which is not something you see often. And just in those 2 games alone, they allowed 33 shots at the rim, 29 makes. That's not going to get it done.
So you're saying that because it was funny because I was at the game, the Michigan State Purdue game, and I kept seeing Braden Smith go out, and I was like, okay, he's not in foul trouble. I thought maybe he was sick or something because there were times where he's just not on the court, and when he's not on the court, man, they really aren't scoring. I mean, MSU, I guess they picked their poison and they picked it correctly. They said that Fletcher Lawyer not going to have a good game, and if you take away that shot, that 3-pointer at the buzzer, he had 5 points. So they just made sure they were going to frustrate him. And Braden looked like he was going to have it. That little fadeaway shot was just deadly. Like, he's the type that I would pick at the playground and I would hate to play at the playground because you play this great defense on him, and then he just hits that little fadeaway jumper, and it's just pure as butter. But then, as you said, he wasn't in there. Do you think because not really a deep rotation, they're wearing down?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. And I think Michigan State did a really good job throwing a lot of bodies at them. Fears was on them. Richardson was on them. I thought Holloman did a great job on them. And I think just after a while, we get 3 bodies like that could just go full speed at you. it kind of does wear you down. And so I think Painter tried to buy some time. Like, okay, we'll take you out with 4:30 to go, knowing we got the under 4 timeout, and try to give you a little extended breather and then put you back in. But I think this is just a culmination of 40-minute game after 40-minute game after 40-minute game against the best teams in the conference. And you're trying to do what you can to stay in the title race. So, I get it. But I do think the fact that they don't really have a backup, they took Fletcher Lawyer away completely, and their on-ball defense isn't great outside of C.J. Cox. And if you have 3 guys that can drive the ball, then you can't hide Lawyer anywhere. So I think like Michigan State did a great job of getting a bunch of guys going downhill. They ran that middle pick and roll to death where they were throwing lobs to Cooper. And so I just thought Michigan State had a great game plan. Completely took Lawyer out of the game, kind of let Kaufman do his, but made it tough and just hounded Smith as much as he could. I mean, you don't really see him turn the ball over 6 times like he did.
No, they did to put the pressure, and that's why I was wondering, because at the game I didn't know if the announcers were saying, hey, maybe he was sick, had the flu. Everybody got the flu. So I thought maybe that's what wrong, because he just didn't look himself. It was very uncharacteristic, some of the turnovers. But I kind of equate him, he reminds me a lot of Trey Holloman, where good point guard, but if you speed them up, you get the silly turnovers. Not the, great defense, I picked your pocket, but the traveling, the bad pass out of bounds. Trey Holloman is the same way. You speed that cat up, and you're just like, Trey, what? And then, a whole bunch of a whole bunch of my bads come from him. So that leads up to Michigan and Michigan State. And before we get to that, Michigan State goes on the road to Illinois and they win that game. Didn't see that thing coming. At the beginning of the year, when you play the win-loss game, Harold, I had that one as a loss just because going to Illinois just doesn't work out that well for a lot of teams, especially MSU. Mackey and Assembly Hall, really both Assembly Halls, kind of the bugaboo for the Spartans. But then, a couple strange things happen. One, Illinois decides to hang a jersey upside down. Now, granted, it's number 0, but I mean, that is the epitome of you had one job.
Yeah.
Make sure the jersey is the right way. And it didn't even stop it and be like, well, okay, you know what? No, just no. We're going to fix this. We'll be right back in the next time out. And then the fact that in a game where Illinois starts off 3 for 4 from the 3-point line, I didn't realize it until I went back. They didn't score in the final 8.5 minutes of the game. I'm going to say this for Illinois, and this is going to be for a lot of different teams. Is the grind of the Big Ten just kind of wearing some of these cats down, and now they're just not as sharp, and you're seeing the fatigue factor because how they started and how they finished, 2 totally different teams.
Yeah, and I think Illinois is just a weird team in general where they have a ton of talent, but kind of like Michigan State where they're not a good 3-point shooting team, but unlike Michigan State, they know they don't need to shoot that many because they're not good at it. Illinois is going to continue to shoot the threes even if they're not going in. And so you wind up in a situation where you miss 19 straight shots to end the game.
Yeah.
I mean, they went up 31-15 and got outscored by 30 the rest of the way. And a lot of that was bad shot selection. I think that they don't have a true leader on that team. A lot of freshmen are playing, outside of Boswell, the Arizona transfer. So I just think Illinois kind of falls in love with the 3, especially when they're going early and they just kind of think it's going to continue. And I think Water found his level as that game went on. They shoot about 30-some threes a game in conference play, which is way too many for a team that's got a big point guard, that's got 2 bigs that can score in the post. And they kind of seem to have an identity crisis right now. And then the flu situation, as we've talked about, completely took them out of the game in Wisconsin. I don't know if you saw the great guard, Brad Underwood, at the end of the game, like, hey, we don't want to shake hands because we got the flu running through our team. So we're just going to wave and say bye and then see you down the road.
No, I didn't see that, but actually that makes sense, man. It's like Trust me, I when State had the flu bug, I was like, yeah, you know what? I got everything in post game from the press conference. I don't need to go in that locker room. I'm good. I'm gonna go home. I'll read about it if I miss anything. If somebody pulls a Rasheed Wallace and just guarantees a game, I'll read about it in the papers. So now the big game coming up: Michigan State, and it's just. Look, what Dusty May has done with this team, they are the kings of the close game. I think it was like some stat where they're like 9-4 in games decided by 3 or 4 points or less every game. Why is every game such a grind if you're a Michigan fan? But, you know, how do they keep finding ways to win this? Is it just simply because they keep winning them so they're confident, like somebody's going to make the right play?
I do think that's part of it. I think especially early on when they lost to Wake Forest and they lost to Arkansas and they lost to Oklahoma, those were all by 3 or fewer. And I think it took them a while to kind of figure out what to do late in games. You know, I think a lot of times Danny Wolf might have had the ball too much and was trying to force things. And now Trey Donaldson seems to be more a part of it late in games. And I was joking around, but it kind of turns out to be true. It seems like every Michigan game's a 3 or 4 point game with a minute left. And then you just they just find a way to figure it out. You know, whether it's a putback from Golden off a couple offensive rebounds, whether it's a Donaldson 3, whether it's a Wolf drive or some free throws, they just continue to find ways to do it. And I think they've gotten comfortable in that spot. To be fair, though, you do wonder if you're playing with fire a little bit too much. You know, if you wind up getting to the tournament and that magic runs out in terms of, oh, well, you know, it'll be a close game and then we'll figure it out. Sometimes those shots don't fall when you need them to. And they've just had so many big leads and have seen them shrink. And you just wonder, will that continue? But as of right now, if you look at their last 7 wins, they've been by 3-2, 3-4, 3-4-4. So they've continued to figure this out.
Yeah, they do. Now, going up against Michigan State, they got the 2 7-footers. That's the advantage for Michigan. But I do wonder, because Illinois didn't do it and Purdue did not do this, will Michigan zone MSU and say, you got to beat us with outside shooting? We're not going to let you run the ball. We're not going to let you fast break. We're not going to let you get Lob City on us. You got to prove to us you got to hit outside shots, a la what Indiana did. Or does Dusty May just accept the challenge and say, you know what, I think my horses are better than your horses. Let's go.
I think he'll zone some. We've seen them do that throughout the season, but I was kind of surprised that Illinois didn't go to it. Purdue's just not a team that zones. Matt Painter's just not that way. Gene Katie wasn't that way, who he learned from. So I'm not too surprised that didn't happen, but we've seen Michigan play zone. I certainly wouldn't be surprised if they played a good amount of it just to make Michigan State make threes and, you know, kind of see what happens. I think for Michigan State, they've got to put a ton of pressure on the ball to turn defense into offense. Try to stay out of the half court as much as possible. And Michigan does like to play pretty fast. So if they're taking a bad shot or Wolf's turning it over or something like that, then they can get out and run. In Big Ten play, you know, they're tied with Washington in terms of most points allowed off of turnovers per game. So opportunities will still be there. You know, I think they're more efficient than Indiana was. I think Indiana was very much, hey, we'll slow it down. We'll make sure one of our bigs get a post touch, and we don't mind taking 20, 25 seconds off. I feel like Michigan's going to want to play faster than that. But if they do, that could turn into some runouts for Michigan State.
So Harold, when I look at this game, I mean, I think it's probably, I talked to somebody in Vegas, it's probably going to end up being like a 2.5 point favorite for Michigan at home at Chrysler. I expect the crowd to be probably 60-40 Wolverines or maybe even 50-50 Spartan fans because the ticket price is funny. I kind of saw this with the Lions fans. Where folks realize Lions fans going to buy up the tickets. They're going to take over our stadium anyway, so we're going to upcharge them in ticket prices. The ticket for this game on Friday, about $150 for a ticket. On the flip side, Maryland, who we'll talk about a little bit later, coming in there, got just as much as claim to the Big Ten. They're one of the hottest teams. You know how much those tickets going for?
How much?
$15, $16.
Wow. Yep, because they know they're not going to try to take over the stadium. So we don't have to worry about jacking those prices up.
So I say that to say, because I always say, like, instead of playing at Chrysler, they could play this game at Little Caesars in downtown Detroit if you're just going to have a 50-50 crowd. Because I think that I don't know if it's going to be easy to take the crowd out of the game, because half the crowd may not be rooting for you anyway. So when one team is down, the other crowd is going to be even louder. I expect a whole lot of go green, go white in that game, especially if MSU gets a lead or gets close. How does each team win? Because the scenario I see, if you're Michigan, you got Wolf, you got Vlad, just use your 7-footers. MSU has a lot of tall guys, but they don't have any big men. So you can, Vlad does not get into foul trouble. So he's like Zach Edey to me. I don't think Zach Edey ever fouled out of a game, but he made a huge difference in altering shots and rebounding and things like that. That's Vlad. Wolf, if he plays under control, man, he's one of the best players in the Big Ten. Now, I think if you're Michigan, you got to hope that you got the good Donaldson, who can come out there and just play under control and not do a lot of things and turn the ball over. If they don't, Michigan, it sounds funny. If Michigan can limit their turnovers to maybe 12 or less, I think that they can win this game, because they're not going to give Michigan State easy transition baskets. And I think, being at home, playing in so many close games will pay off dividends, where you'll see, a final score of, 71-68 type of thing where they win. On the flip side, how I see it, MSU wins this thing if they turn Michigan over. If Michigan has 15 or more turnovers and they're allowed to just run the lanes, and they get a lot of easy baskets from Cohen Carr, and the fact that Michigan State, there's no go-to guy. Like for Michigan, okay, let's try to limit Wolf. You go pick your poison. Let's limit Wolf. Let's let Golden score. Let's stop Golden. Let's let Wolf score. For MSU, because I asked Matt Painter this after the game, how do you game plan against a team with no star? How do you game plan against a team that on any given night, 8 of their top 10 players could be the leading scorer? And he was like, man, that's a great question. It's hard. It's difficult. You just kind of hope for the best. If MSU gets that balanced scoring, I think that that's going to be a problem, because I do think that they could wear Michigan down with their depth. What you saw with Purdue, what you saw with Illinois, end of the game, legs weren't there, but Michigan State was able to substitute. Okay, now all of a sudden, Holloman goes down. Oh, I forgot. Here comes Jace Richardson. That type of thing.
No, I'm totally with you on that. Like you said, the depth was crazy. You had, I think it was 8 guys between 7 and 12 points the other night against Purdue. You didn't know where the run was coming from. And, I think that really is hard to game plan for. Jace Richardson kind of kept a minute early. Then you saw Frankie Fiddler get involved in the second half. And so you just don't know where that wave is coming from. I think Frankie Fiddler is going to be a huge difference in this game if Michigan State is going to win, because if they're going to go zone, they're going to have to find that middle. And against Indiana, we saw there were times where he flashed in the middle, got it, turned, went to score. And there were other times where he got in the middle, looked hesitant, and turned it over. So I think he has to be confident. He has to be aggressive. And if he winds up getting in that same spot that he was against Indiana, he's got to look to score. And maybe, with him coming off of the good second half he had against Purdue, that'll give him some confidence to play more aggressive in this game. I do think that you said that points off turnovers is going to be huge. We talked about how they're tied for last in the Big Ten in terms of allowing them. I think Michigan State, the magic number for them in terms of shooting threes is 20. Whenever they shoot 20 or more, they've lost 4 of their 5 games. They are 11-1 when they are shooting under 23s. So kind of unlike Illinois, they know they need to go in the paint and score. Like, that's where they make their living. Like, they don't make you shooting threes. So if they don't shoot a lot of them, I think that's beneficial. But as we know, it's hard to score in the paint with 2 7-footers. So you're going to have to drive in there, go aggressively, get to the free throw line if you can, shoot some pull-ups or some floaters like Holloman's done and Beers has done. So it's going to be a very interesting contrasting styles. The fact that these two teams play twice in the final 5 games, with everything on the line, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of 2019, where
Yep.
I think they ended up playing 3 times in 18 days.
Yep.
Because they ended up playing in the Big Ten championship game as well. Yeah, because now you had your numbers. It's funny because I got a couple for you. For MSU, their magic number, you said that 20 or less threes. Their magic number, I think, is 69, and that's points. Haven't lost when they've scored 69 points or more. All the games they've lost, 68 points or less. That's been problematic. And that's why I wonder if Michigan tries to slow the game down. It's what Indiana did. And because at that point, Michigan State gets desperate, and that's when going into your number, they start jacking up threes, and they look bad. The other numbers is the number 10. Undefeated in games that Cohen Carr or Holloman has scored 10 points or more. So once again, Holloman is kind of like it's the battle of the trades. Which trade is going to be good, Donaldson or Holloman? Good Holloman, floater in the lane, playing good defense, maybe hits a 3 or 2, but he drives to the basket. Bad Holloman is 5-6 turnovers, a whole lot of chest popping, saying my bad, my bad. So. And then looking at Cohen Carr, if he can get a shot other than the dunks, because I think that you're not going to stop the dunks, but they leave him open. And it was kind of funny because it was one time they didn't leave him open against Purdue. And that's how Cooper was able to get an alley-oop. And they kind of broke it down on your network. And it was funny because it was like, why are you trying to guard Cohen Carr, who's hit 3 3-pointers all year long, and you're not leaving the lane wide open? But yeah, I think that if you can get contribution from Carr and Trey, especially on the road, because Carr can just shut the crowd down with one dunk. That's it. He'll demoralize you. And as Izzo said, you throw it anywhere near, he will get it. But yeah, those are some numbers that I have for you. But when MSU gets 69 points or more, they win games. 68 or less, chances are they're not going to win the game. So
no, I think that's fair. I think the pace part is interesting because if you look in Big Ten play, Michigan, they want to push the pace. They average 68 possessions a game. It's 5th in the conference. I just don't see them as a team that wants to play slow. Maybe defensively, if they really lock in and Michigan State struggling to go zone, then, we could see a lot of long possessions there. But I think offensively, they're going to want to go fast. I think if the situation presents itself, they'll try that pick and roll with the 2 bigs, or it'll be, Donaldson coming down and shooting the 3, or they're going to try to get a lob. So I think there's going to be possessions there. And I do think Michigan's going to turn the ball over. That's what they've done all year. Yeah. But can they take advantage of that? And, again, Michigan State, they need to score in the paint. They had a ton of paint points against Purdue. They had a ton against Illinois with Jackson Kohler getting hot late. But can you do that against 2 7-footers? It's going to be a very fascinating contrasting of styles for sure.
No, it is. And before we leave, I do want to talk about a team that's, I think, surprising a lot of people. That's Maryland. Where did Maryland come from? Because they were just at the bottom, and then they were a middle of the pack team, and now they're fighting for one of those top 4 bids.
Yeah, well, I think they got the best starting 5 in the conference. You could argue in the country. The problem is they got no depth behind them. But if you look in terms of the minutes played together, the possessions played together, they're top 5 in the country in both of those. They get close to 65, 66 points per game out of their starters. I think you got the Big Ten freshman of the year and Derek Queen. I think he's done enough to kind of surpass the Rutgers guys. And so, you got him, Julian Reese he's been there all 4 years and it's been a problem. They got really good guards in Gillespie and Rice, and Selton McGill's turned into a knockdown 3-point shooter. They're very athletic. And at home, they're a real problem to deal with. On the road, they can kind of, you don't really know what you're going to get. But in College Park, they're real tough to deal with. And so,
I always call Maryland and Illinois and Wisconsin has always been my box of chocolate team, like Forrest Gump. You just never know that night. You can get this team like Wisconsin going into Mackey, like, wow. Or you just get the teams that just fall flat on their face and you're like, okay, yeah, I'm not that shocked either. But yeah, I'm just looking at Maryland. I'm just like, man, like you said, at home, man, you can forget about it because they are tough. Now they got both Michigan and Michigan State. I know they got State. Michigan State they got at home, and I think they travel to Ann Arbor, right?
Yep.
Okay, so like I said, Wisconsin is the only one. They got one tough game. They get to sit back, put their feet up, and just try not to stub their toe. The other teams, I like the fact that the Big Ten scheduled it this way because it's a battle royal to see who's going to get the number one seed, but who's going to get that double bye. Because I think of all years, this is a year you don't want to play an extra day. You want that extra day of rest. You want to let them other teams knock each other out and do different things. So that's just how I see it. But yeah, the big game coming up Friday, Michigan State. What I guess the winner will be in sole possession of first place, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So
yeah, and if Michigan wins
later.
Yeah, and if Michigan wins, they can get a real stranglehold on this thing, at least in terms of getting a share, because then you're 2 games up on everybody. And, obviously they go to Michigan State at the end, but, they get Illinois, who's been really struggling. They get Maryland at home. So if Michigan wins that game, you can feel really, really good about clinching the share if you're a Wolverines fan. But if you lose that game, then it opens it back up for Michigan State. It opens it up for Wisconsin. It opens it up for Maryland a little bit. And the race gets real at that point.
And the team that really disappointed me this year because I expected so much was Rutgers. I know they got Rutgers coming in, but, man, I just – with 2 guys that's going to probably go top 2 of the top 3 in the NBA, just – very underachieving. I expected Rutgers to really be that team, but we have not got it.
No, not at all. It's been unfortunate. And you saw last night just some of the flashes that they had. Dylan Harper goes for 34. We've seen Ace Bailey go for 30 multiple times in conference play. But, the role players haven't done enough. They're known for being a tough defensive team, a tough rebounding team. We haven't seen that much at all this year. It's kind of trying to get those 2 guys to fit with the overall like Rutgers Pikel identity. It just hasn't been a good mesh. It hasn't been a good fit. So yeah, I'm with you on that. To have 2 top 5 picks and be fighting to make the Big Ten tournament is not what we expected.
No. All right, Harold. You got anything else? Because if not, yeah, we'll have a nice little breakdown of this game on Friday. I'm sure early next week because somebody's gonna have a stranglehold or it's going to be wide open.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is the threes for Michigan State. If Michigan does go zone, they got to find a way to attack it and not just settle. And, we talked about the 69 number, getting over that. We talked about the 3-point number and staying under 20. So if they're able to do those 2 things, I think they got a good chance of winning the game. But if they start falling in love with threes and just settling and not looking like they know what to do against the zone, then I think it could be a problem.
All right. You heard it from the man, Harold Shelton himself, senior research guy at the Big Ten Network. I'm Rico Beard. Guys, thanks for watching the 5 Star Zone. We'll be back next week to recap what happened over the weekend and preview the next weekend's games. For Harold, I'm Rico. Thanks for watching. Keep liking and subscribing.